Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. As usual, guys, I like to take my time and welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things I deem very expensive. First time, 24 hours has been offered to every one of us on this planet. What we do with that time will speak volumes of your life. And so I invite everyone to learn the value of time. The other is a journey. The journey is a powerful creator. It has created Robert. It gave him some stuff that we want access to. What are those stuff? Wisdom, knowledge, insight, all of those wonderful sights, if you will, and wisdom. And we want to dance in that because it is our goal as if we excavate all of that from him that you and I will learn to become better human spirits while we're here on this planet. Robert, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thanks for having me.
It's an honor, man. As I said to you, I usually toss this question and I afford the opportunity for you to kind of crystallize to the audience as to how you are able to help. And my question is, how do you serve, man?
This aligns with my purpose that I was able to articulate about 10 years ago, which is to help people remove the obstacles that keep them from being their best. And I chose all those words carefully after I read a book by Cheryl Batchelder called Dare to Serve Leadership. And she talks about servant leadership and how she turned Popeye's Chicken around. She was the CEO of Popeye's Chicken. And she taught everyone on our leadership team how to define their personal purpose in life and then to bring that into the day-to-day activities at work. And I wanted to have every day at work be living out my purpose. I didn't want to just have a job. I wanted to be finding fulfillment every day. A lot of times we work just to do something else we care about, but I wanted to be able to focus on how I was doing my work so I could enjoy it. And so living out my purpose was important to me and I didn't know what it was. So when I defined my personal purpose as helping people remove the obstacles that keep them from being their best, then I came across this company I could join, a franchise where I led groups for business owners and CEOs. And we meet every month and all we're doing is helping them remove the obstacles that keep them from being their best. It's the coolest. So I do it with a passion. I love what I do and it's making a difference in the world.
I think that's the mistake that we make, Robert, in society as a whole, that we are not afforded the time to seek inside to get that clarity to speak it, because I believe once we release it, if you will, that definition of what you feel it within your heart to be and to do, I believe that things come around, synergy come around and make that a possibility. But a lot of people don't express what they want because they haven't decided yet, Robert, what they want. And the question is, what have you learned to decide? And once you decide, you will speak what your decision is and it will manifest. One of our customs here is to go back. I like going back, Robert, going back into, I call it the beginnings of our beginnings, because I want to know, how did you come about that mindset that you have today? Where did it come from? What happened in your life to cause you to learn how to put these type of principles together? And one of the very first places that you and I visit when we hit this planet is that place called the family. And in that family, Robert, we learned some wonderful things there. What was your family unit like?
Oh, my family unit was pretty broken. I grew up in a pretty stressful family environment. My father had a lot of mental issues and he had a brokenness to him. So I watched my dad beat my mom and us siblings as I grew up, and I was incredibly fearful of him. Just, you never knew what was going to piss him off. He'd just be sitting at the dining room table having dinner and he'd just smack you and knock you out of your chair. You had no idea what you did. It was a rough time. I grew up without really understanding what it would be like to be a man. I had a lot of things I knew I didn't want to be. I just didn't know what I wanted to be like. And God was so kind. He brought youth leaders from my church into my life that were godly men who would model godly attitudes, who would model humility, who would model honor and integrity. All these things my father didn't have. And I was very blessed to spend time with these guys. And we went on adventures and backpacked, and Tim Van Scooten used to take me on his motorcycle to go wash trucks on Saturday morning. I could sit on the back of a motorcycle and make, $20 and have lunch with the dude. And it was just awesome. So it was highly dysfunctional at home, but God continued to bring people in my life that would teach me what it could look like to be a man. And then I got married and I still didn't know what it looked like to be a husband. So learned through that journey, had some bumps in the road along the way, but all along, I think as I continue to seek God, he's continued to teach me what he created me to be, the person I'm supposed to be, designed by him for his glory, for his purposes. And as the closer I get to God, the closer I understand who he's made me to be and what that looks like.
Yeah, the Bible tells us that he had given us an assignment before the foundation of the earth. Yeah, he knew us in our mother's womb, even
Isn't that
by the
cool?
psalmist talk. Yeah,
Yeah.
he knew us. That word "knew" is a powerful word when
Yeah.
you look into the meaning and what it really entails. And so he knew you and I from that way back then. It says in
But I
Psalms
don't
when
think
you
we
were
give ourselves a chance to be that. I think we feel
now.
defeated and we just feel like, all I can do is try and optimize the junk I've ended up with. That's not how God came to fulfill us in life. You have the power and authority to change your life if you're willing to do what's right. Excuse me. We wrote a book called Nobody Cares Until You Do, and it's about accountability because I saw in my own life and I saw in the life of my clients, people who own it, people who don't make excuses or blame or say they can't do anything about it or just wait and hope it gets better. People who truly own their situations gain the power to change them. And that's the story that Kathy, my beautiful wife, Kathy and I, we in 2019, we owed $90,000 in credit card debt. Debt into the government and the credit cards, and that didn't include the home or cars. And it was really ruining our lives. And we just kept thinking, well, maybe next year will get better. Maybe next year we'll make minimum payments. We'll try this. We'll try that. And what we weren't doing is we weren't owning it. But when we
Yeah.
finally owned it and said, look, this isn't how I want to live my life. This is causing me stress and worry and fear and fighting with my wife. I don't want to live like this. That we decided we needed to fix it. And so we sold our house and we downsized and we took the money from our home and we paid off everything and we started over. But that moment of owning it opened our eyes to see that when you truly own everything, you then have the power to change everything. It didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of effort. And our house was really hard,
Yeah.
emotionally and physically, with a lot of effort. But it's what we felt we needed to do to get out of the hole we had created. And then we started looking at our marriage and our how we spent money, and everything now became something we could do something about. And all that did was continue to move us towards a victorious life instead of living life as a victim.
Yeah. Until you do that, there is no beginning. It is the beginning, isn't it? When
Yeah.
one began to take responsibility for their actions, their mindset, their beliefs, and all of those things, you must take responsibility because you put you there. And until you take the responsibility to get you out and own what you did, you will never move. You'll just be in that spinning. And again, as I said on the onset, one must be one. There's a scripture that says, decree a thing and it shall be established. But when you go back and you study the original Hebrew and stuff like that, it says decide a thing and it will be established. You cannot decree it until you decide it. And you and
We
your
really
wife
own it. Yeah.
decided
Right.
that, wait a minute, we have to own this. There must be some responsibility. There must be some ownership in our
Yeah.
life and what we have done. And once you've taken that ownership, then there is possibility to change and you guys change. Robert, let me ask you a question, man. When you had talked about your dad and how you grew up in that really interesting situation. As one that grew up there, how did you manage your relationship with others? As you were watching your dad, and God was so powerful that he gave you those men in your life, because I know, again, as I said, he saw that assignment. He knew you from your womb and he had to put some people in there to assist you. But how did you manage yourself in there? How did you come out having your dad and then having all these men that were placed there before
Poorly,
you?
poorly. I managed myself poorly. I was very lost in my focus. Everyone needs parents. Everyone needs a mom and a dad. For me, not having a dad left a big hole in my mindset. And so I
Yeah,
had to figure out what it looks like to own your life, to be responsible, to be a man. I didn't have a good vision of what that was. I lived most of my life just barely getting by. I did the very least I had to do not to get in trouble. I did the
yeah,
very least I had to do to graduate college. I did the very least I had to do to keep my job, but I was never living the life I really wanted. And that's the key phrase that we just focus on all the time.
yeah,
Are you living the life you really want? And most people would say no, but then they wouldn't do anything about it. They would
yeah,
just make excuses or blame or say, I can't, or just wait and hope. Those are the four traps of being a victim. So as I walked through my early years of life, I didn't manage well. I think I only learned to manage well when I had to. When it was
Yeah.
thrust upon me in my job, and my boss would say, "Hey, you just can't not get this done. You got to get it done." And I'd figure out, okay, I guess that's what accountability looks like. Like you just always get it done. And then
Yeah.
being married, you have responsibilities. We had a child born when I was married 8 years. And all of a sudden, I have a kid. I didn't want a kid. I wanted jet skis. I was not interested in children. And all of a sudden, she's like, "We're gonna have a baby," and I was, "Oh, there goes the jet skis." And so, but when I saw that little angel, my life was changed forever. I
Yeah.
just, I knew this was beautiful and wonderful. So I grew up as I went along. My
Yeah.
desire would be that people don't waste their years growing up as you go along. There's enough examples out there. There's enough truth. There's enough people who can help you if you are willing to be open and honest about your journey. I was not. I tried to hide all of my issues and challenges.
Yeah.
One of the things that we talk about in our book is that nobody can hold anyone accountable. You can only hold yourself accountable if you want to, but accountability requires vulnerability. I did not want
Yes.
to be vulnerable. I was a
Yeah.
pretty broken young man with a lot of confusion, and I didn't want to bring that up to anybody, including my wife. And so you hide all these things that you think you're hiding, but you're really
Yeah.
not, because the world looks at you and says, "What's that guy's deal?" And everyone sees your
Yeah.
brokenness. You just don't want to admit it. When I finally got to a place of full surrender before the Lord, which was at a Promise Keepers conference in 1994 at Anaheim Stadium in California. Thousands of men standing there praising the Lord, and I'm like, I don't even get this. I don't know what this is about. That's when I fully surrendered to Christ. That's when my life changed. That's when I really knew God. And that's just been the journey I've been on ever since, is just continuing to surrender to Him, learn more about Him, walk with Him, be used by Him. It's a constant growth.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, Robert, because one of the principles I tell people that one must, or spaces that one must visit in order to break through to the other side, if you will, is that of surrendering. And again,
Mm.
I'm a Christian man. I grew up in church. I'm a born again Christian. And I remember reading in this garden where this guy was, that we call Jesus Christ, was praying. And he had a conversation with his dad. And he said, "Look, Dad, I don't know about this cup, man. I know we planned this because it tells us he was crucified before the foundation of the earth. And so now it's coming down to the real stuff, the manifestation, the nail in the hand, the whole thing. And he's there. I'm not sure about this, man. Is there
Yeah.
another way?" And he sweat blood. I've never been to that point where I sweat blood, Robert, but I know I read in the documentation that he was sweating blood at that point in time. So this must have been an intense conversation, if you will. And at that space, he said, "Not my will, but thy will be done." He surrendered. You cannot go to the other side until you get there. Talk to us about your surrender, because we know that type of life before that, helter skelter, as they say, all over the place. And many of us are all over there. When you were at that meeting, what was it that happened to you at that space? Because here's this man is trying all his best, doing all the things that he wants to do and trying to figure out his way. What was it that caused you to say, "Okay, man, I throw my hands up. I'm out of this. I need help"?
Yeah, I think it really was the calling of the Lord. I know He had probably been reaching out to me for years and years and years, but I really wasn't willing to listen. I grew up in the church. I went to church. I led a Sunday school class for young marrieds, and then took my clients to nudie bars on the weekdays. I was such a hypocrite in my life. But the
Yeah.
reality was that He was calling out to me. I just wasn't listening. On that day, I remember seeing all these guys singing praise songs to God. And I'm like, I don't get this. What is the big deal? I knew of Jesus. I knew His name. I didn't know Him. I didn't know Him
Yeah.
intimately. It's like me. I know
Let me ask
Ken.
you a
I know
question,
Terry.
Robert, before let me interrupt you here, because I want to ask this. You were living a life of compromise, as all of us Christians do. What prompted you to go to that? Because you could have said no. What
Yeah.
prompted you to go to that event?
Again, I'll just say the Lord was calling me, because I
Yeah.
did not want to go. It was big peer pressure from the guys at my youth group, or the guys in my
Yeah.
church group. My sister was going to volunteer, and her husband were promoting it and saying how great it was going to be. And so I just went out of kind of guilt, like, again, playing the role of a Christian where you look religious, and that's what religious people do. You go to events like this. And so I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, I'll go, figuring I'd just go and knock it out and go back to my life. But I think God was calling me in another journey, another piece of my story, where He was
Yeah.
moving me to a place of surrender. That's what really got me there that day. And we've seen in our own lives that when the pain of where you are is worse than the pain of where you've got to go, you will really change. And we talk about rock bottom. People hit rock bottom, and then they're finally willing to change. I didn't hit rock bottom, but I got to a place of I yearn for that. I'm looking for
Yeah.
something in my life I've never found. And I felt at that moment God was calling me to a relationship with him that I had just kind of visited. I knew of, I didn't experience. And it was only out of a desire to really understand what this is about that I surrendered. It just seemed like everyone else seems to enjoy God except me. I'm religious. I am doing things, but I'm not enjoying him. It'd be like me and
Yeah.
you knowing each other and but never hanging out, never having
Yeah.
fun, never laughing together. What kind of relationship would that be? And my heavenly Father loves me so much. He wants so much more for me. And so he called me that day, and I guess I was broken enough to be willing to listen, and he had removed whatever things had come between us. But it was an amazing day. I felt closer to God than I ever did in my entire life. And the peace and the joy of really submitting to God opened up my mind to what God was wanting to do through me. It was an amazing moment.
That is awesome, man. I love those testimony, and I wanted you to get an opportunity to tell us how that release came. And once you did that, because people, they lie to Christians and they tell them that once you do something like that, Robert, that you're going to tiptoe through the tulips and everything's going to
Oh,
be
no.
fine.
Oh,
And, the God is going to bless you, the pouring on all the good stuff on you, and
no.
that you will never have a problem again. And Jesus will walk through and all the stuff that they've been lying to us for many years, not understanding that God's model is through suffering
That's
because
right.
he's interested in the character, and tribulation works patience and patient works, and it's all about character. So
Yeah.
when you made that transition and you began their journey, because I know that's when the fun starts, Robert, talk to us about when the fun starts, man,
Oh my
and
gosh.
how did you begin to maintain yourself within that new relationship that you have just ignited?
Yeah, it's May of '94. I go to Promise Keepers. I surrender to Jesus, and I'm just so excited. I can't read the Bible enough. I can't talk about it enough. I'm just feeling so close to him every day. I'm just enjoying my relationship with him. June, I had a 10-year anniversary ceremony for my wife and surprised her at the church with all the people in our wedding and said, "It's been 10 years. I'm recommitting my love to you. I'm so excited. And this is going to be another great 10 years." And another month later, she files divorce, drops off papers at my office. And I come home from
Wow.
work and the house is empty and my 2-year-old daughter's gone with her. And I remember looking around and going in the kitchen at this empty house. And I turned to God and I said, "Wow, this is the thanks I get for surrendering my life to you." And he replied to me, "No, I was getting you ready for today." And it was
Wow.
a horrible experience in my life. I have never had so much pain. I've never cried as hard as I did those days. I lost everything. I went through a bankruptcy. My wife sued our church. So it was very public. So everyone knew all about
Yeah.
it. It was just this whole ordeal. Everything, including my wife and my daughter, were gone in one moment. And I was broken and hurt in so way. But God was so kind. He provided,
Yeah.
physically provided for me a place to live. Physically had people bring clothes from my daughter. She garnished half of my paycheck off the top.
Yeah.
It was
I've
gone.
been there.
And so trying
Been
to
there.
keep up with everything, it was just a long story, but some of the worst days of my life, but also at the same time, I felt God's presence. He protected and provided and loved me. And I felt I grew closer and closer to God through those days of just trusting him. But those were some hard moments for sure.
Yeah, the dark times is where we get in touch with who we truly are. And we see those spaces, Robert, that are dark, that only God can rescue us from there with his knowledge and his insights. And we're just holding on to him, as you say. But
Yeah.
that's the beginning of where we ought to be, where the tribulation hits, because that's the place that many Christians are afraid to go, or many people are afraid to go, not understanding. If you look at the Bible, you'll see stories about all of that. Joseph, how many years, God tell him this, and then next thing you know, his brothers betrayed him, they tossed him, they sold him, he's working, he got a promotion, he's working great, the wife lied, he's in jail, so all of this suffering went on for years because he got that vision when he was a young man and a young, young teenager, I think it was. And as he got older, was when God began to bless him. But he had to go through that tribulation, if you will, to learn the character, because where God is interested in all of us and what he's interested is our character. And so as you've been through the pain, talk to us about how God began to show up, because this is where we get a chance to see in all the darkness, his character traits are being seen, his faithfulness, his love, his
Yeah.
mercy, all of the good stuff that we get to see about his character. We began to look at it and go, wow, this is some stuff. And he begins to work with us. Talk to us about that journey for a little, Robert, when he was bringing you through some of those lessons that you had to realize and changes that he saw showed you that you needed to make some adjustment.
And I don't think there was a plan that I could have pointed out that I see, well, I just need to work on this area. It felt like every area was immature. Every area was not
Yeah.
good. There wasn't a whole lot in my life that I could say, well, at least I have this done or organized. And so I think what it was his faithfulness in walking with me as I took on one problem after another, one thing after another. I didn't really know how to be a dad to start with, but now I'm a single dad. And I didn't even know how to do the first one as a couple, let alone single as a.
Yeah.
I also was quite on the career path, and I was growing up through my company and had the next big step was to move to South Carolina and become director of marketing. And man, I just didn't want to work anymore. I didn't show up for months at my job, and they were like, "Are you going to come to work?" I'm not interested in work anymore. And all the things that I had chased, all the things that I thought that mattered, I realized they didn't matter. Not
Yeah.
that we don't need money, not that we don't need to use the skills that God's given us to be leaders and to be driven, but it's not what matters. It's honoring the
Yeah.
Lord. It's walking with him. It's seeing the lives that God's put in your hands and being good stewards of that. So I think everything was up for grabs. How I looked at the world, how I looked at relationships, how I trusted God. I felt like I was starting over my life. Like I was really beginning to build something that would be a whole lifetime. I'm 62 now. That's
Yeah.
what is that? 50 years later. I don't even know how old that was. 40 years ago, I went through all that junk. 30 years ago. My math sucks. But it was been a long time. And yet
Yeah.
God is still continuing to teach me and grow me up. And I don't think that we're ever done growing as long as we're on this side of heaven. We're just going to continue to learn and grow and trust him more.
I believe so as well. As you went through all of that and you're now, God is teaching you, he taught you much, he learned much about you. How did he begin to formulate your current position and your life, and he began to escort you towards this specific area of life that you're currently in? How did he begin to put those pieces together, if you will?
Yeah. Like I explained earlier, I lived two different lives, one at work and one at home or one at church. Um, God forbid they ever met each other. It would have been really awkward. But I decided at that point, I just want to be one guy. I just want to be
Yeah,
me everywhere. And in my quest for living out your faith at work began at those days because
yeah,
I wanted to tell my clients I took the nudie bars, hey, I'm sorry that I gave a bad representation of the man that I wish I was, but that's not who I am anymore. And here's who I am. And I would not blame you for being frustrated with me, but this is the guy I'm going to be. I don't do those things anymore. And
yeah,
it wasn't a condemnation of them. It was admit that I'm not being who I was, or I wanted to be at least. And so I think that was the catalyst for me starting the mindset that everything in your life, there should be one version of you everywhere. The man
yeah.
I am at home, the man I am at church, the man I am in my neighborhood, the man I am at work. Everywhere I go, it's still Robert Hunt, one version of me. And that's what I am constantly perfecting and practicing. How can I be consistent to the man that I want to be, who looks like Jesus, who models that faith that is in me, who models the behaviors that God's created inside of me? And that's a constant discipline of getting rid of my ego and my own selfishness and constantly drawing closer to the Lord. But my quest is to help people understand you can live out your faith everywhere you go. Whatever you believe, and I would like for people to know Jesus as their Lord and Savior, but it's not my job to save anybody. It's my job to model that. But whatever you do
Yeah,
believe, you should bring it to work every day. You should model
yeah.
that because that is the goodness in you. That is the thing that can bless other people, that can make a difference at work. Don't leave your faith at home. Don't visit it on Sundays. Bring it with you everywhere you go all the time. Be consistent to that. That's where power comes from. That's where freedom is found. And I'm still on that journey, but that's what I really believe.
I love it. I think, and again, society trains us to split those two, and growth demands that we merge them. When we come together, becoming a whole individual, if you will, demands that you merge those two and
Yeah.
become one. And when you are split, there's no way that you will be able to grow because you are split, you are separated. Power is in unity. Robert, talk to us about when you began to look into your clients, if you will, now that God brought you in, He saw you, emerged your character. And He is now going to bring you to that space where you're going to be used in your, if you will, in your gifts and your assignment. Talk to us about being used in your assignment and how does that come about? And talk to us a little about when someone presents to you. I know you do it in corporate places and so forth, but I'm sure you also do it in private places. I saw that you have many different things that you have set up for folks that they can call you, having this one-on-one and so forth. Talk to us as you began to engage, if you will. How did you manage yourself there, but also what was the response with those that you began to minister to, if you will?
And I think the whole thing was to not to show up and start condemning everybody. The whole
Yeah.
thing was to show up and say, I screwed up. I wasn't being the man I really want to be. And I'm sorry, but I'm going to start modeling who I really truly believe I want to be. And I spent no time telling them they're doing something wrong. And I
Yeah.
spent all my time focused on me doing what I believe was right. And I think that's where pisses people off is that, you come in and you act like you're a righteous, godly person and you throw down all your judgment on everybody else and tell them how screwed up they are and how bad they are. And you got your own plank in your eye and you're looking at their speck. And so I really just
Yeah.
loved them and cared about them so much that I wanted them to know Jesus, but I didn't have the arrogance to look and judge them because I knew what I was. I knew who just
Hmm.
days, months, years ago, I had just been not the version of God I wanted to be. And so I don't need to point my finger at anybody else. That mindset still is with me today. When I meet with my clients as a executive coach, I never tell anyone what to do. I ask them what they want to do. And I don't look at their life and go, well, you need to know Jesus. Because
Yeah.
that is not what's going to draw them to God. What I want to do is model Jesus. So they
Hmm.
go, I would like to know what you know. And that is how my clients do. They ask me, what is that all about? Then I get a chance to point them to Christ. That's the opportunity that God stirs in their heart at His timing. But I spend my time listening and caring for and loving my clients. And God will do what God's going to do in His timing. I don't hide my faith. I'm very bold about it, but I don't spend my time telling them how to live their life any more than I spend my time trying to tell them how to run their business.
Yeah, each one of us has that the ability to make our own decisions, if you will. One of the most powerful ways by which one can preach, if you will, is their lifestyle. It is the premier place where one can look, as you and I are told, and to model ourselves after God. And Jesus modeled Himself after the Father. He says, "I do everything I see Him do." And
Yeah,
so we
good
have to,
example.
in turn, model who
That's
Jesus
right.
is. And so we are modeling as Christians here. And I tell people, they ask me, who are you? I say, I am a son of God, not a child. There's a difference. A son of God knows who they are. A child. And I told them, Robert, I said to them this way, I put it is, I said, a son does not react. He responds. And Jesus Christ, whenever, every time they came to him about something, he responded. Whose face is on that coin? He responded. But a child, when you look at little children, well, I was a saved young man, and as a child, we don't respond to a situation. We react. We start screaming and yelling. And so there's a difference between a child and a son. And so when we become sons of God, because those are the ones that nature is waiting on and the people of this world is waiting on, the sons of God, they know who they are. So as you are demonstrating who you are as a son, what has happened, the changes, talk about the cement changes that have taken place in your life as a man now who is singular in his approach to living. What has that done to you?
Peace. I used to worry about everything. When you finally get to the awareness and the truth that you don't control hardly anything, really, I mean, really control, even, your work at work, your effort at work, on your best day, you're not in a good mood, you're tired, the computer doesn't work, the client doesn't show up, employees have everything you try to control, raising your kids, being married, all those things that we think we can control, we really
Hmm.
can't. So when I learned to let go of the control aspect, I found great peace. Now, it doesn't mean I don't try, but excellence is doing the best of your ability while you pursue the life you really want. And I want to be a child of God, a son of God, as you properly articulated. I want to be a son of God who walks with Jesus, who is caring for the world and the things that God's put in my responsibility and do it well. But I don't control hardly anything. But
Yeah.
with his power, with his strength, I walk with him and I can get more done. So I stay close to God so I can do the things that I know he's led me to do. But the peace that I have along that journey is God's going to do what God's going to do. And I'm only here
Yeah.
for a short period of time. So how do I optimize the things he's put in my responsibility or on my radar to give him the best return? And have fun. Enjoy your
Yeah.
life. If you're not laughing and having fun and enjoying, you're missing what God came to give you. He gave peace that's beyond human understanding. You can laugh at the challenges that come your way. When you have problems, you can go, okay, all right, well, this ought to be interesting. And you don't have to
Yeah.
panic and freak out because the God of the universe is in control of this and he'll take care of you. That peace has really guarded my heart. And I've learned to be really comfortable with it.
Yeah, I hope you guys are listening. Robert, I always encourage our listeners to learn to transition into the different aspect of receiving. You have one, as Jesus said, makes a statement. He says, those who have ears, let them hear. So he was talking about something else than this natural stuff. And I want to welcome you guys to really hear what he has said and how God has been instrumental in his life and caused him to become one individual. And being that one individual, he is able to become more effective in all aspects of his life, at work, with family, with friends. And that's the key, guys. You have to become one, singular in who you are. You can't be split, because if you're split, you don't, you're acting and you're not genuine, you're not authentic, as they say,
Right.
because you're putting on a show wherever. But when you are real and authentic, you are who you are. And I want to ask you this question, Albert. You have a mic, and it's plugged into all the billions of people on this planet. What would you say?
Don't be lazy. Everything is in front of you. And most people just exist. They're responding to whatever junk comes their way every day. And they're exhausted and frustrated. But to have true accountability for your life, you're proactive. It's easy to respond to, my car broke down, I got to get money to pay the bills. But if I had proactively reduced my standard of living so I had enough money in the bank so when the car breaks down, I pay for it in cash, I was proactively doing the things I need to do. That's accountability. Responsibility is, oh, I got to pay for the car. It's broken. I got to put it on my credit card. You're responsible. You fix your car. You can still get to work. That was not proactive.
Yeah.
I don't want us to be lazy. The IRS says that 60% of Americans will get to an old age where they can't earn money anymore and they'll need someone else to provide for them till they die. We got 50 years to plan for our retirement, at least 40. And 60% of America is not going to be ready because we're being lazy. We're spending money the way we want to. We're doing whatever we feel like it. We're moody about our finances. And that's just one category, but same thing goes for our health or our marriage. And so just don't be lazy. Take a vision of the life you want to live, list it out, and go do it. And don't say you can't, and don't blame, and don't make excuses, and don't wait and hope. Own it, be proactive in nature, and go chase the life that you really were created to live, because you only got one shot at this and you don't know what's going to end. And so I think you need to feel that there's a purpose for everything you do and not be lazy about it.
That's awesome, man. Guys, we're going to provide everything, all the links for you guys to get access to Robert. Get into his space, man. Get wisdom, get knowledge, get insights to what he's talked about and shared his life, where he came from and where he is today. That is the journey he talked about, building character, how to go about doing that, how to become one, authentic within the self and be able to become effective in your life. He talked about his relationship with God and how he is learning to model himself after Jesus Christ. And so we want you to get access to him because he is here. And I believe that he came here for a reason. And so his assignment is someone needs his wisdom. And so we're going to provide all of these links so that you guys can have access to him, get to him and learn and become effective and change your life. Robert, thank you so much for coming, man.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
It's an honor, man.
Thanks for tuning in to Threads of Enlightenment with Ken Primus. Hopefully you're now feeling more empowered to overcome the challenges in your life, whatever they may be. Share that inspiration with others by telling them about this podcast, rating it, and of course, remember to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. For more connection, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram by searching for Threads of Enlightenment. Until next time, stay enlightened.